I learned a lot of things. I mean, one is I almost got this role. Like one time I came really close to getting a role in a film with Robert Redford and Michelle Pfeiffer, called, can't remember. It was written by Joan Didion or something. It was about reporters. Anyway, I almost got this role that was like, would have been my first like all the way through the movie role in a little supporting part or whatever. And it was down to me and one other actor, and I didn't get it. And it was one of the first times I was actually really bummed. Like I was like, wow, that would have been life-changing. Now I'm just like, back to temping at whatever, Lever Brothers or whatever, like whatever the hell I was doing. And I didn't get it. And if I had gotten that role, I would have left New York and been away. And like 30 days later, I got the notice. I got told by someone about Primal Fear, this film Primal Fear with Richard Gere, which I ended up auditioning for, and ended up being my first film. And so, it's very hard in the disappointment of a moment to like, when people say the kinds of things I'm about to say, it always sounds like weak. It sounds like a weak aspirin against the pain that it's like, yeah, oh yeah, like being disappointed. There's an opportunity that is out there that you wouldn't have gotten, and you just go, yeah, give me another baby aspirin. I'd rather have I need a Vicodin right now, not a baby aspirin. But the truth is that has happened to me a lot, where a disappointment has ended up keeping me in the wind for the thing that I really wanted to happen to collide with me. And I think that you kind of just gotta let it go. You just gotta let it go.
How do you do that? It's one of the things we talk about here is like about the mental game, right? It's like the mental game, because I think when they see people's success, they go, oh, you said, it's like a Vicodin you needed, it's an impact on your life at the time. Somehow you wake up in the morning, and I'm curious of what you do, because it's that you wake up in the morning, you're like, it's not like, that was nothing, it had an impact on you, but you process it a certain way, and you wake up in the morning. So what do you do mentally? Because you're in a world of acting is a big world of rejection. It's like entrepreneurs, like you said, it's like you're an entrepreneur just out there being rejected all the time. Same with entrepreneurs, you get a lot of no's until you get a yes. But what did you do to keep in the game mentally? Is there anything you do?
I honestly remember the great old comedy record, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, the 2,000-year-old man?
Yeah, of course.
And there's this one thing when he goes, this is one of my favorite lines. He says, "What was the main mode of transportation 2,000 years ago?" And he goes, or 10,000 years ago, and he goes, "Fear. Fear was the main mode of transportation. You saw a lion, you ran, I kind of think fear laced with aspiration or ambition laced with fear tends to like make you get up and look at your to-do list and just, get going. But I mean, honestly, dealing with disappointment is its own psychology. I think, there's a lot of people who are wiser than me about that. I'll say this, in my own life, something that's been an airbag against emotional disappointment is having a lot of interests, like just simply having a diversity of interests and staying involved in a variety of things is helpful, because having something to turn your brain into with focus. And I'll use an example. Like I'm a pilot. I've been flying for like 16 years, right? And I've had very distinct moments where the noise in my brain was getting sort of toxic. And when the fact that I would go and go, you know what, I'm going to go get my instrument rating, or I'm going to go get my thing, because those engaging with those things was like this great equalizer on my head. And I find surfing to be like that. I find, playing guitar to be like that. I find hiking and being out of doors to be like that. All the things I do that I'm interested in, and many others, just keeping your brain positively activated and frankly distracted. Because when you're disappointed, you need to frankly just get distracted out of the, what Eckhart Tolle calls the brain body loop, right? You get into you keep repeating the thought, it makes your body tense, it fires your adrenals, and it intensifies the negative thought. And you have to break it. And I find for me, just having a diversity of things that I feel, if one thing's not going well, but these things are fun, it sort of makes you, it's quicker. It short circuits that thing where you characterize your whole life by the disappointment, because you're able to go, well, I can grab my board and go surfing. Life's pretty good. I can,
you try to break the cycle of thought. Instead of just cycling on the negative thought, you're like, let me go get something in my life that I know I can at least do something good at. I can surf. I can go fly a plane. Everyone can pick. So you're saying like, go put yourself in a place that can give you some feedback loops that don't let you stay in the cycle, stay in the loop.
By the way, that has not changed for me at all. Like I'm 51, right? And I've done a lot of things I'm proud of, and that other people point to. Oh, he's good at this, or he's made these great films, or whatever. You have financial success. You have whatever. I was really passionate about Motherless Brooklyn. I love the film. I love what we did. I'm proud of everybody. We put it out on the cusp of like COVID and stuff like, and it didn't get the box office that you want out of a major studio release, et cetera. Probably like 5 years later, we might have made that for a streamer or something like that. You know what I mean? But, and so you go, there's this dimension of disappointment that sits alongside and no matter how many times, there's literally nobody in the trade that hasn't gone through thinking something was going to go better than it went, and getting measured, getting the bigger small body blow of sort of something not doing well on a short-term metric of short-term financial, recoup, box office, whatever, right? And so you go through that, and for me now, even now,
what did that feel like?
I feel a kind of an ambivalence or a sense of disappointment about something. The fact that I'm involved in some of my own companies, forget even the huge balancing of having kids, or all the things that are really, really profound equalizers, and dial the volume down on that. Even if I just separate that completely and look at like, what are you doing with your day? For me, having things to turn my attention to, that by working on them every day, I can create a sense of positive progress and feel like my life's rich, I'm applying myself, I'm getting, those remain for me the best ways to distract myself from the head spins around a major or minor disappointment.
If you could give just one piece of advice to people who are out there trying to fulfill their dreams, trying to fulfill their purpose, trying to put themselves in what you call those uncomfortable situations, what would it be?
I'd say there's a quote that has been stuck in my head for a very long time, since the day I made the decision to move to New York City in the first place. Again, when like I didn't have a job, I didn't have any money, moving to New York City to do theater. I spent 2 years working for free, getting rejected. I played a clock. That was a big role for me. I'd rather regret the things I did than the things I never tried. And I think for any entrepreneur, any new business owner, anyone joining the workforce, any student, anything, you're not going to know until you try. And does that mean go jump off a bridge? No, you idiot. What it means is, if you can do it, if you at least try doing it, then try it. Life is so short. Like, before you know it, you're not young anymore. Before you know it, it's over. And so that is the one sure thing we are all completely aware of. And so I'd rather regret the things I did than the things I never tried.
my models kind of involve increasing the stakeholder pie. So if you have a stakeholder list of the world and only 10% are being sufficed by what it is you're doing, you're really missing out on the 90% of the world that if you brought them along, they would add value as a stakeholder to what it is you're doing. So the lack of problem solving capabilities in a lot of models that exist out there in a lot of sectors and ecosystems is just because there's not enough problem solvers there to think beyond their typical models that they exist in right now. It's the way it's always been. This is the way it's going to be. This is the industry standard. This is it's like, well, why is it like that? Is there better ways to do things? Can we get the right people focused on problem solvers together to figure out how to add more stakeholders? So it's really about the idea that if you have a few stakeholders, why not add the world as a stakeholder? Why not figure out how to piece everything together so that at the end of the day, you have a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for all stakeholders. And that's including your competitors. It's including people you would never think are in your equation. It's like, it just requires more brain, more thought power, more piecing together of things. But I'm very optimistic that any given state of an industry or sector can be improved.
Do you have a practical example that you're thinking of where that win-win-win-win-win you could see happening and the competitors come together? Like what do you think?
Yeah, so I went down to meet a pretty well-known actor in LA, and he's got an organization. It's an environmental organization, and at the time, his biggest issue was the loss of social capital from friends and family. Okay, trying to support this cause, but they're starting to run away from him because he's consistently year after year asking them for money for a cause they're not really necessarily caring about, or they're not seeing being improved by what they're doing. Okay, I took a lot of time and asked, learning that's his problem and figuring. I spent about a year trying to think about the problem and think about how I could solve the problem. And along the way, I started building a general framework for problem solving. And I started realizing that I had, over the years, been able to have a model that could be used in a general fashion to be able to take any problem, micro or macro. So a micro problem is one that you're not going to add the world to. It's a little problem that you have. You're not going to say, I'm going to add the world as a stakeholder. And then you have macro problems, would say, this is a problem that I think we can try to add the world as a stakeholder. And if we figure out how to create a solution that the world is on board with what we're trying to do in order to solve that problem, we're going to have a whole bunch of a massive movement created of stakeholders that will continue to support that solution because their lives are improved with that macro problem that they want to continue to support what it is you're doing.
The way we've described the wall with different guests over time is and getting better understanding is that it's kind of set up for a reason to keep the fakers out. Like if everyone could go all the way, it would just be easy. But these walls are set up to just kind of look you straight in the face and say, are you committed? Because if you're not everyone can do this. It's just not an easy from rags to riches, from idea to company, or to a book idea to actually a book that is a bestseller, or many books are bestsellers. Yeah. So it feels like, what do you think? It feels like the wall set up just to keep out people who are not serious on trying to make this journey.
I don't know if the wall is there to keep other people out, but I do know that the wall is there for you to figure out how bad do you want it. I could remember, saying every time I hit that wall, whatever it was in many ways, I remember saying, all right, God, is this your test? Are you testing me to see how much I want something? Come on, God, because I believe in God very much. Come on, God, send me any test you want and watch, I will pass it. I am not going to fail. Come on, God. And that was my attitude as I started on the adventure of being the Suze Orman who you see today.
Do you think you can be an entrepreneur or take this journey, call it journey of purpose, without believing in God?
Oh, I do. I don't think everybody has to believe in God, but
or
I
believe in a higher, that there's something, a hand, I call it like the hand, it's the hand of God out there, that sometimes you think you're staring into the abyss and something pushes you along because you're committed. But it feels like sometimes that I've talked to many people. Do you think you could do this journey without just thinking there's nothing else out there to help me? Or what do you think?
Right. I probably couldn't have done this journey without that faith.
Same with me. I couldn't have done this without knowing now, many years later, 25, I know something's out there to help me along, I think.
that no way could I have. However, I do not also believe that that is necessary for somebody to make it. More than anything, I think people have to have faith in who they are. People have to know their own thoughts. People have to do what is right versus what is easy. And people have to be a warrior and not turn their back on the battlefield. And they also have to really have a mantra for themselves that they have to have faith, even if it's in themselves, that everything happens for the best. If they have those things and they're in touch with that, I think they have a good chance to succeed.
A minute ago, you talked about people have to stand in their truth. It's a
Yeah.
very powerful saying. What does that mean? To stand in your truth,
Well,
from your perspective?
you know, it's the truth of my whole life is that I've been a lesbian forever. You know, I'm what they call this gold star lesbian. I didn't even know what that was, but fine, Kristen Wiig kind of educated me on that with all her time she imitated me on Saturday Night Live. But again, that's besides the point, right? But is that I always kind of knew that I was gay, really starting when I was in 8th grade. And that was my truth. And I stood in that truth. So the first time I ever went to get a job, not as a waitress because it was Berkeley, California, everybody working there was gay or whatever. It didn't really matter, right? So, but when I went for a job at Merrill Lynch, it was the first thing I told them. I said, "You do know that I'm a lesbian, right?" And they were just like, and in their heads, it was like, "Oh, great, a lesbian that's going to sleep with us." Well, that turned out to be different for them, but that's besides the point, right? But when, when CNBC, it was like, "You do know I'm a lesbian, right?" My second book, which was The 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, at that point went for $800,000 from Crown Publishing. And Chip Gibson was the president of Crown at that time. And I went in, I said, "You do know that you're about to pay $800,000 for me to write a book, and I'm a lesbian. And if I'm asked, I'm going to tell everybody. In fact, I'm probably going to tell them even if they don't ask me." And I said, "Well, tell me something we don't know." And I went, "Okay, just making sure." But because I stood in my truth, whether it was on Larry King, no matter where I was, even when I won my first Emmy Award, I think it was in 2004. And here I am, and I'm on television and I'm kissing KT before I go up. KT is my spouse. And I go up and I go, "KT, this one's for you. I love you." Like, I always stood in my truth. And that truth gave me power. And that power is what everybody was attracted to. Because, Rob, I didn't have to worry about, "Oh my God, they're going to find out. Somebody's going to out me." Oh my God, it didn't keep me back. And so the truth is so powerful. And I have a saying that, the truth attracts people, people control money, therefore the truth attracts money, and lies repel people, people control money, therefore lies, repel money. You got to be powerful. The truth makes you powerful, lies render you powerless. And if you don't stand in your truth, oh, you are lying.
Where did you learn that, though? I mean, it's once again, I think it's extraordinary, but I think people have a lot of doubts. They're afraid to, like you said, you came out as being gay, being a lesbian. Like, that's a major step, and you did that. But even
especially way back when I did it.
when did you do it? How old were you when you came out?
I was like 13, 14.
Yeah,
Now,
so
remember, I'm 70 right now, Rob. So that was a long time ago. It's not like today, although it still is hard for many kids today, right? But back then, it was something that it was not good on any level. It wasn't.
Where did you find where did you find that part of you? Maybe it's a question you can't answer, but like, you found that within yourself as a young girl, and you carried a lot more of that principle throughout your life. It's one of your values, obviously. But once again, I think people are challenged with that, even though you'll say it like, just, stand in your own, truth. a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they'll have a lot of doubt. They have noise in their head. People tell them things. You can't do that. You're too young. You're inexperienced. You don't know what you do. Like, where do you find that thing?
I think, believe it or not, that comes back to God, at least for me. Because if you believe in a higher power, or you believe that everything happens for the best, and you really believe it, that they aren't empty words, they're truths. They're truths. And you know who you are. Then at least I knew I was a lesbian. I knew it. I knew who I was attracted to. I knew who I wanted to, be with. I knew that. And so it was just, and maybe it was my naivete back then, but it was like, guess what, everybody? I would just kind of tell them. Like, I'll never forget the first time I told my parents, without even me knowing why, is that, I had brought my girlfriend home from California for a Thanksgiving, and we were still very young. We were just out of college, and even in college, I ran a gay women's house and everything, but I guess my parents just never really put it together, and I never thought I needed to say anything because I brought women home. We, were together. I just thought they knew. And it turned out that they did know, but they never told anybody else in the entire family. So now I bring my girlfriend home for Thanksgiving. The entire extended family is there. And somebody asked me the question, well, Susie, why did you move to San Francisco, to Berkeley, California? I said, because it's so much easier to be a lesbian there. Very naively just said that. Well, everybody just was like, bam. So my parents, who knew, obviously, now that I think about it all the way back then, never told anybody. They didn't tell my brothers. They didn't tell my aunts. And I just never thought about it. I thought everybody knew. And so, I don't know, Rob, I always was so happy. And I loved being who I was on every level. I loved being a waitress. I loved serving people. I loved everything I did. I mean, and partly because I loved what I did, the customers I waited on felt that love, and they give me $50,000. Do you see, everybody? It's what causes you to do that which you do. And when you come from love, you get back more than you'd ever expect. You come from the desire of being a CEO or an entrepreneur and making a lot of money and being successful. You'll get very little back if love isn't part of that equation. In fact, the number one part of that equation.
So when I look into the book, and when you talk about reality, and you say there's objective and subjective, and being conscious and being unconscious, and you speak about being aware. I want to talk about this a little bit because I think for entrepreneurs, a lot of times you have these big dreams, but you make a lot of mistakes. Mistakes are good, you learn from them, but you may make the same mistake 20 times and you don't fulfill your dreams. So I want to talk about, when you write in the book about reality, this idea of reality, the world in which I perceive, how do I know it's real? How do I know I don't have a blurry set of glasses on?
Rob, this is a very important question and a very important discussion. I'm not sure all your entrepreneurs will be ready for it. So the question was, how do I know the world I perceive is real? And the short answer is, it's not real, period. Period. Anything that you see, if you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, think about it, imagine it, conceptualize it, feel it, it's not real. What is real is the consciousness that is projecting that world. And you are sharing that consciousness with other people who are projecting the similar world. Right now, for example, what we see in the world is, let's face it, we see social injustice, economic injustice, extinction of species, war, terrorism, an unsustainable planet, and basically conflict everywhere, and conflict with ourselves and our relationships in the world. And now, given that, it looks like insanity, right? We're actually heading together for a collective suicide mission with a world that has mechanized weapons of destruction, atomic warfare, biological warfare, cyber warfare, where every solution, by the way, to every problem is a war. War on drugs, war on war, war on terrorism, war on cancer, war on pandemics, war on everything. No creativity. Recycling the same ideas, the same concepts, and that becomes our collective reality. Now, if your internal dialogue says, I want a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, you have to start with that. Then you hang out with people who are the same. In Eastern wisdom traditions, they say, take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha means your own ecosystem, your community. Take refuge in a higher cause. Then I ask myself, who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? What am I grateful for? What's my vision? Can I express it with authenticity, integrity, and a higher cause? And I don't care if it works or not. It works.
So you're saying, which is kind of the I'll call it rule number one to entrepreneurism, is that embrace the uncertainty, because life is uncertain. And we tend as entrepreneurs to have very uncertain lives because we're creating things like you did, a book, or you had an idea that nobody liked because they didn't see it in the world until you brought it there. So there's a lot of uncertainty with new ideas and creativity, right? So you're saying just embrace that. But then it seems like as humans, if I dig a little deeper and go into, we can have a voice in our own heads that tells us, going back to entrepreneurs just in general, I'm not good. I'm not the right person to do this. I don't have what it takes. I'm not smart enough. I didn't go to the right schools. There's a little voice that's in your head. And what is that voice that then is in there? Because that creates a lot of uncertainty,
That voice in your head is your childhood. Okay, so recently there's been a lot of work on what social scientists call the happiness formula. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yes, yeah,
okay,
of course.
So H stands for happiness is equal to S. S stands for set point in the brain. And 50% of our happiness experience every day comes from the set point in the brain. The set point determines how you look at a situation. Are you looking at it as a problem, or are you looking at it as an opportunity? That's the only difference. So unhappy people look at everything as a problem. They criticize, condemn, complain, playing the victim. On the other hand, successful and happy people, it doesn't matter what the situation is, somehow in their mind, they say, hey, what's the opportunity? Like right now, during the pandemic, I talked to a lot of innovators. You'll be surprised at the opportunities they're coming up with in the world of technology, service, goods, etc. Now, how does that set point get determined? It gets determined in the first 5 years of life. So if your parents gave you, particularly your mother, because your first contact is your mother. So when a child looks at its mother, it's looking at her eyes, facial expressions, body language, gestures. It's looking for 4 things: attention, deep listening; appreciation, she's noticing me; affection, she loves me; and acceptance, she accepts me just like I am. The baby doesn't have a language yet, but it's responding emotionally. So if you get these 4 A's in your life in the first 5 years, you will look at the world very happily as an opportunity, no matter what the problem was. But if your parents were all constantly complaining, condemning, looking at problems, playing the victim, then you grow up with that attitude, because that's a phenomenon in the brain we call mirror neurons. The neurons of the baby mirror the neurons of the parent. Okay, so that's 50% of your happiness experience. Can it be changed? Yes. How do you change your set point? Through everything I talk about in the book, Total Meditation.
Yeah.
Reflection, self-inquiry, mindful awareness of the body, mindful awareness of mental space, mindful awareness of relationships, mindful awareness of your connection to the world, and ultimately transcendence, going beyond all this to the core of your own being. When you engage in this kind of reflection, which I call total meditation, spontaneously, your internal dialogue changes. You start to see possibilities. So that's the first thing, set point.
Yeah, but one of the things, let's challenge it a little bit, but I know when I was going through this journey when I was 27 to 30, and you write about this, about anxiety. Like I would get these panic attacks. I mean, literally, like I would feel like I'm having a heart attack at 27. My arm would go numb. I'd be heating up my body. It was crazy. You talk about it in here about being stuck. Talk about being stuck in your book. So maybe you can talk a little about that. How do you get unstuck? And it didn't, for me, it took me 24 months. It took me 2 years to get unstuck. It wasn't like a one shot thing.
In the book, there's a whole section, a whole chapter on getting unstuck. But you get unstuck through reflective inquiry by asking those questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? Etc. What am I grateful for? Actually, once you ask yourself, what am I grateful for? All hostility and anger goes away right that moment. You can't have hostility and gratitude at the same time. It's impossible. Okay, so that question is very important. But anytime you have anxiety, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, humiliation, depression, you start on the wrong track. There's not even a start. So you have to define success you have to also know what success means to you. Success is the progressive realization of worthy goals. It's the ability to love and have compassion. But most importantly, those two are not going to happen unless you're in touch with your creative center. And your creative center cannot be accessed when you're anxious or have any of those emotions.
It was a couple dots that connected by sheer coincidence, because otherwise I'd still be in inauthentic living and not have ever gone into the abyss, which, by the way, I did. So, the first dot really came in rereading a book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, great book. By the way, great book for entrepreneurs. This is a must read too. So, but that's another topic. Go ahead. Yep.
Well, and the crazy thing, and it's very similar to product creation, I had read this book in my 20s and it didn't speak to me. And I created products 20 years prior and they didn't resonate, and then reintroduced them 20 years later and they were like our hottest products ever. So it's the same thing. When you're ready for something, like, it speaks to you. So I had heard about it on a podcast I listened to, and I decided to reread it. And 2 words in that book changed my life. Like, that was it. Viktor Frankl talked about logotherapy, a form of existential analysis. So here I am, a writer my whole life, never heard the word logotherapy, never heard the word existential. And when I read about existential despair and angst, I realize, oh my gosh, this is actually me and what I have been afflicted with my entire life. And that started the ball rolling into, for the first time, seeing myself. So I believed every quality that made me who I was a curse, right? Because living in this world was so challenging, being hypersensitive, and being told all the time, you're too this, you're too that, when I'm like, but this is who I am. And this was the first time when I saw that existentially depressed people tend to be highly creative and have these things called overexcitabilities, which make their intensity to life experience much more acute than others. I couldn't even believe it. I said, wait, is it possible that the things I tried to kill in myself my entire life are actually a blessing? And I have a blessing and a curse, and that the ability to create from nothing, which I thought was just something I did, is actually because of these highly stigmatizing qualities. And it was, I never cried because I never felt emotion. I was truly that disassociated from feeling. I cried for about a week straight after I saw that I wasn't alone. And I actually had something that maybe was like my secret special superpower and the reason I was here on Earth. It was unfathomable.
So you're saying by reading the Frankl book,
The Frankl book, and then further reading, because I I love knowledge, and like once I find something like a little shred, a little glimmer of light, I'm following that glimmer of light like wherever it takes me, and that unraveled many other books, and ultimately that's what made me say, you know what, I've been futilely racing outside myself. I am so darn exhausted. I'm more exhausted than I've ever been, and no closer to filling that inner void. I'm going to finally have to do it. I'm going to have to plunge into the abyss. And I wrote a verse like that day. I wrote, the only way we'll ever find contentment or true bliss is to say it's now or never and jump into the abyss. And I basically wrote that and jumped.
So tell the abyss being the abyss, I assume being the unknown. You're going into that. And I heard somehow I picked something up somewhere in my ecology. It was like that when you stare into the abyss is where you find your character.
Exactly.
So I guess that you decided to jump. Now, what was the unknown? What was the thing because that's the thing that would scare the shit out of you.
Yes.
You don't go into the abyss going like, this will be fun. You're going in saying, I think this is a way forward, but I don't have anything tangible to hold on to. It's the abyss. So where were you heading? What was that? What is that? What did it become?
So for me, the abyss was the pathway between inauthentic and authentic living. And it meant for me that I was going to have to, at the base of the abyss, stare existential nothingness in the eye. Because that's what I had been running from my whole life, is my mortality and the fact that I won't be here one day, and nothing I can do can change that fact. And that I might find that everything I did was utterly absurd in the end. And that realization, which I had from the time I was 2, was so dark that I couldn't deal with it, right? I raced away from it my entire life. So I knew I couldn't make that journey alone, because I was terrified of staring that in the face and realizing that it's a big part of me. So that was the first time that I admitted I was imperfect. I had never admitted imperfection, and that meant I couldn't ask for help ever. I mean, I was the type of person, if someone even said, wow, you're carrying 5 things, can I help you? I would say no. I was this, because I never felt I could trust anyone. I basically denied any form of sustenance for myself or from anyone else. And this was the first time I was like, I have to do this. I knew it. I was like, for some reason, it was like, I have to do this right away. I have to make this journey, or I will never be at peace. So and I ended up, by the way, going on the podcast. This was 3.5 years ago, that had told me to read Man's Search for Meaning in this really weird voice-like way. I was like, well, then I got to share my truth on this podcast. And I hadn't told anyone. I knew it. Doug knew it. No one else in the world knew that I suddenly realized I had this deep, dark affliction. And I went on this podcast and was terrified. I mean, that was the first step into the abyss. I was like, I'm coming out. I'm saying that the shiny person behind, these toys and you thought you knew throughout your life is not who you think you knew. She's a pretty dark person. And after that, I received hundreds and hundreds of letters. I was so shocked. And everybody said the same thing. Basically, I thought I was the only one who experienced this, and you gave voice to what I was feeling. So this sense that I thought I was the only one. I thought I was an alien from another planet. I thought no one could ever experience what I did. And suddenly I was seeing how wrong I was. That was a flawed cognition. And that actually many, many, many of us feel those dark feelings, of course, because we are inevitably a full spectrum of emotion.
How you create gender justice at home, I think, is really critical. And then you'll get to workplace equity.
So gender justice, this is awesome. So let's talk about, gender justice at home. So there's a sense that there's a male, female role that we play. And we got that from our parents. Like my father and mother, they're married 53 years until my dad passed away, but it was kind of not old school. It was new stuff, but definitely from the old school, right? And that's what we learn. So I guess if you can dig into that about gender.
Yeah, it's totally what we learn. It's like, what is men's work and what is women's work?
Yeah.
So like most of us, I'm sure when I interrupt my husband, I'm like, but I do the bills. And I was like, right, because that's what you're supposed to do as a guy. But I do all these other things, And I think part of it is just like, again, he's learned from what his dad did, and his dad learned from what his granddad did, and it's been passed. We also live in an American society that doesn't really value that work. I mean, the vast majority of men in power still have women who stay at home. And so, and it goes the other way too. Like, stay-at-home moms are not part of the feminist movement in the way that they should be. When you take a year off of work after you have a baby and you're a woman, you want to go back to the workplace, you lose 40% of your income. So we still judge, right, women who want to be at home and I think my point is we should let it be a choice. And let it be a choice, we have to value it. And we're paying the price of that. I mean, every article, I'm sure you've seen it, the birth rate of this country is at a 50-year low. You talk to young women today, they don't want to have kids. And they don't want to not have kids because they have an ambitious career or they're lazy. They don't have kids because it's too expensive. And they watch us. And they're like, I don't want that. And so as a nation, we don't want to be Japan. Right? And so we have got to incentivize. I mean, we have to save motherhood. Motherhood is at risk. And
we think it's at risk.
It is at risk. It is very much at risk. And we have to save it. And in order to save it, we have to value it, we have to respect it, and we have to compensate it.
So what can we do as men?
So much. So much. I mean, listen,
because there's this where I just like to not say come clean, but I just think you think there's these roles like, okay, I do this and you do that. And we have to have roles because we both double up on something. We're wasting time. So you kind of like split the roles down the middle, although I love to cook. But my wife does everything else in the home. She's an awesome mom. She gave up her job. She was worked at a hedge fund and to have kids. And it's hard. I think it's very hard. And then I think once you're in the cycle of having kids, it's kind of, you're in this hamster wheel. I don't know how you get out of it. I don't mean I feel like I'm doing a therapy session with you. But,
no.
But like, how do you get out of the hamster wheel? Because I think people get stuck in it. And then I'm always concerned that my wife will end up one day being,
resentful.
Not fulfilled. Right. What happened there? Like it was a big blur for 18 years. And where's my life? And while I'm out, I'm living my dream and doing my stuff. But I'm saying like being a mother is an amazing thing. But it's just, it seems like you get on this hamster wheel. That's the way I can describe it.
Yeah, I mean, being a mother's job. And just like any other job, it gets tiring. It's like you want moments and you want a break, or you want maybe another job, right? And so I think that that's the way that you have to kind of look at it. And I think every woman is different. I think the point is you want this to be a choice. You want to live in a society where you feel like you actually have a choice. And not that this decision is being made for you. What's interesting about moms, even who are moms like your women, your wife, getting a maternity allowance, which in Britain is only £12 a week, which isn't nothing. It's just a validation that I'm working too. Like the slogan that I have is all women are working moms.
I see. So it would give a woman a sense that I'm a working mom. Right. I see what you're saying.
This is like.
This is a job.
This is a job.
I got my job.
And I'm contributing to society. And I have something for me, right? That like gives me my sense of freedom. I think the second piece of this is just, it goes back to the cognitive labor, right? Like what I always say to my husband, like when we go on vacation, I pack the bag, I make sure the baby has their diapers and they're froggy and they're this and they're that. And you get to just get your laptop bag and like walk outside, like must be nice. And so it's understanding all the things that we hold in our head and the mental toll, you know what I mean, that takes. And even if you're privileged or, you have resources, you can't outsource parenthood. And so unless you're a certain kind of person, which I don't think you and I are.
I'm saying, yeah, you could, but you think
you could, but
your children are going to be, you're probably going to have problems with your kids somewhere.
Right. So like I always tease, like my husband can have a midlife crisis. I can't. Like, you know what I mean? The only time I have time for myself is like right before bed when I pop 2 CBD, turn on my, you know what I mean? Like my humidifier and like pet the dog to chill out for 2 minutes before I pass out. Like, that's not fun. Like and so I just think I'm in the thick of it. I have young kids. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. Like, blah, 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 blah. But I think that like really understanding that and valuing that and having a very different societal conversation around it. And we play a role. Like I was talking as I'm writing my book, I said, I mean, I do have a little bit of pride when I pack everything and we're on vacation and he says, hey, did you bring the bomb axe? And I'm like, oh yeah, I got it right here. Got it. You know what I mean? So like, there's also some amount of pride and like, it's like why we don't let you do things and you do them not well in that. So it's so damn, it's so damn complicated, right? Motherhood, who would have thought, is like so complicated, so controversial, so ready though for a remake, right? Ready for a new, fresh conversation about how we make it work. Because I'm telling you, it is at risk.
As a human being, especially as an entrepreneur, I often believe we all have this little thing that sits in our head. It's like a little person that says things to us, sometimes that are not very positive.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, but I remember I read this book by this explorer, Ranulph Fiennes. He's this guy who goes all around the world, climbed all the big mountains, and he did like he went like a 1 week of running marathons day after day, and he got a heart attack in the middle of it and kept running. And they asked him, like, why would you do that? And he said, it beat the little voice in my head. It beat the little voice that's telling me I can't. So I know I've had a voice in my head. Even I'm 52 years old, I've had this voice that tells me you're too young, like you're too inexperienced. I'm curious if you have a voice. Is there that thing in your head and you're like, shut up? And you're in a meeting and you hear people saying things, but they're not saying things to you. Do you have that?
Oh, yes, I do. It's on loudspeaker. I've got a Dolby surround sound.
What does it tell you?
Yeah, I really do. Yeah, like you have no right to do that. Who do you think you are, Lisa? And the thing is I've tried to read all the books.
Does it say any words to you, but does it say a specific word? Lisa, you're too blank, or you're not enough blank. I'll just stupid. Yeah. I heard that from you. You told a couple stories and I heard you say that a couple of times. And I told the producer, I said, she has that voice in her head tells her stupid. Mine says you're too young. When I went public, I was only 30 something years old and people, you're too young. When I hired my first sales guy, you're too young. You don't know what you're doing. I'll tell you what to do. And and then sometimes I had to find like a gray haired old man as a mentor, and they were crappy people. You know what I'm saying? Like, so stupid is in your head a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
What is that? I've always tried to figure out what the heck is that thing?
Yeah, I've really tried to identify it because I've recognized it's my trigger. And I've recognized that because me and my husband would get into really weird arguments. And it's just like, and then when you really, because we really do love communicating. So once you peel back the onion, as you like to say, we started to really realize that, or at least I started to realize it was always the way I would get upset if he started to use language or a tone that made me feel stupid. And I identified that. So I was like, okay, I've got a trigger. Now I've identified my trigger. I know it. I told him, I was like, it's when you do X, Y, and Z. So he knows how I'm being triggered. And now I looked back and I said, why are you triggered like that? And the truth was my brother and my sister are incredibly gifted at math and academics. And growing up, I wasn't. I was the artist. I was the kid that really struggled. I was mildly dyslexic, still get my B's and my D's mixed up, my G's and my J's, even now in my 40s. But as a kid, I literally thought I was stupid. No one explained to me. No one knew what dyslexia was. So I just thought I was stupid. And so I would literally at dinner sometimes, God bless my father, but he would throw math quizzes at you. And so my brother and my sister are like this, and I'm like, oh God, and I'm like using my fingers, and it creates anxiety, right? As a kid, where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get picked on. I'm going to get, people are going to know that I can't do math as quickly. So I started to develop an insecurity over that for sure. And I recognized that as I started to enter business, and I started to recognize that I can't allow that, because there are going to be times that I am stupid in comparison to the people around me. And now, going back to the negative voice, if it's telling me that, right, I have choices. I can either try and switch it off, turn it down, or use it to my advantage. I've tried switching it off, Rob. I don't know about you. Never works.
I know.
No matter how many people just like, don't listen to it.
Yeah, don't listen to it. I know.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm a person of like, no, actually tell me what works. Give me what works. I need to do what works, because all this like frilly, just don't listen to it, like language, while I wish it was true, it's not. So I tried that, didn't work. I go, okay, doesn't work. It still makes me feel badly. So now I've got another choice. I can either try and turn it down. I can either, right, and turn it down, meaning,
maybe don't be emotional about it. You hear it in your head, but you don't act on it, maybe. Like
exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's still there, but you're not allowing it to be. It's almost more like background radiation than it is the Dolby surround sound, right? But even that, it's just like, it's not. So even turning it down, it hasn't served me. It hasn't actually made a huge amount of difference. But if I can use it as my friend, all right, now I'm not actively pushing it away. Now I'm greeting it with open arms. Now, how do you do that? It's all about perspective. So when it starts, and I have like almost like a mental list of questions. So if it's like, oh my God, Lisa, you're so stupid. Let's say in a scenario, let's say I'm talking to you, say something like, I have no idea what that guy's talking about. Like, business, oh Jesus. Right, and now I'm starting to feel stupid. That voice starts coming in, oh my God, you're stupid. Now, what I do is say, okay, friend, thank you for telling me that. What can I learn from this? And I actually use that language. Thank you, friend. Call it a friend. Thank you, friend. What can I learn? Because now I see it as my friend is helping me out. So what can I learn from this? All right, so he's talking about, going public. I've never experienced going public. I have freaking no idea what it takes to take a business public. So I go, okay, cool. I don't know about taking a business public. And so now I've recognized what the trigger is, the actual thing. And I can go, okay, well, the great news is now I've got someone right in front of me that knows I can learn. Oh my God. Okay, so Rob, how do you take a business public? So now I've gone from feeling stupid to now empowering myself to learn. So now after this encounter, I don't leave feeling stupid. I now leave feeling even more empowered, because I've just learned something that no one can take away from me.
Yeah, and I think there's such great lessons in what you just spoke about how do you turn it around. But I think also recognizing, this is one of the things I wanted to do, having these honest conversations, that if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have this voice. Mm-hmm. I'm too young, Lisa's stupid, someone else is whatever. And it's natural. It's how we react to it. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that just react. They're reacting to it. Like, I am stupid. And you reinforce it until you think, I can't move forward. I'm frozen. So I think it's amazing what you've done. It's such a hard thing. I think it's the ultimate wall. The ultimate wall to me is the mental wall. It's not the product wall. You said, I can look on the internet and figure out how to make a pallet go out of a warehouse, right? But it's hard because it's such a personal thing. You don't go on the internet like, what makes me say I'm stupid? Like, I know there's be 1,000 articles, but me, what makes Lisa? It's very different than what makes Rob. So I think if you're an entrepreneur out there, I think what we're trying to say is that you're going to have this voice. It's natural. It may be even what drives you. It may even be the thing that drives you to be this person that you want to be, right? I don't know what you think.
I love that you said that, Rob. Literally, I was like, it's so true, because it does drive me. Oh, you don't want to feel stupid next time? Find out.
Be smart, right? You're like, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better than everyone. I'm going to go big.
What I do in this book is I take you step by step on, have you lost your miracle mentality? And if so, how? And what are you going to do about it? So what I find is that many times it's chiseled away slowly. It erodes. And sometimes we don't even know we lost it.
Right. It's a slow process. It's like, yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But we can get it back. We can get it back. And a couple steps would be, number one, you got to wake up. Number two, you got to take inventory. Where's my life? What's going on? Number three, you got to partner with the right people. And that's one reason you're doing this podcast, is that it gives people an opportunity to watch and listen to other people's stories. And now you're partnering with us. Whether you ever meet Rob or Tim Storey in person, you're now involved in a conversation where you're partnering with other people that have a different perspective. Because a mentality, as you know, is a point of view.
Yeah.
And so what I say to people, again, you got to wake up, take inventory. Okay, take inventory. So watch how cool this is. If I have a 5-bedroom home, okay, and every room is a mess, in my mind, I got trouble. So I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and his daughter had a lot of friends over. And his wife was on the speakerphone with us, and Tim, I don't know how they got into everything. They're smaller girls. Every room just seemed like, and so the mother was overwhelmed. So if you have a 5-bedroom house and every room is disheveled, messy, and maybe even to the point of madness, what do I do so I don't go wild or lose it? You clean one room at a time. That's how I work with clients in life coaching. One room at a time.
I see.
What's the standout issue? Is it addiction? Is it addiction? Is that the standout issue? Is it lack of confidence? Is it a physical challenge? Is it a challenge with employees? I'm the one room at a time guy.
Do you find then that there's a thread that's running across all the rooms, as in because are they all real different? Because someone could say that I've got my employee problem, I got a problem with my family, my wife, I got addiction. But when you solve one room, do you find there's a knock-on effect in the others?
Now listen, if you wanted to become life coach to the stars, Rob, you could be, because you're picking up on some of my secrets. Almost every time there is a thread that goes through all of these things. And it could be the thread of lack of boundaries, okay? It could be the thread of confidence. It could be the thread of being a procrastinator. I definitely see threads that run most times from room to room to room, which makes it easier. Because now what I could do, once they've cleaned up 2 of the 5 rooms, I go back and I go, hey, let's cite this. Look what you did in room 1. Room 2, look how well you're doing. So if we did that and that, we can get room 3, 4, and 5. And that's what I become a master at.
A very small audience was getting what I was doing. But then there were lots of buyers. We tried to take it to Safeway, and we went to Safeway and we said, hey, try this product, and tried it. They looked at the bottle. They said, oh, it looks great. Try it. Wonderful. And they said, an unsweetened flavored water. So what's it sweetened with? And I'm like, are you listening? What exactly is that? And why do you not understand? And they said, so who else is in your category? And I said, well, that's the thing. We're it. We're
inventing a category. We're inventing a
category. And they said, okay, well, here's my planogram. They even had it on a piece of paper. And they said, there's water, there's diet soda, there's regular soda, and there's this new category called enhanced water. But that all has sweeteners in it. And I said, well, we're somewhere in between enhanced water and plain water. And water. And they said, well, there's nothing in the planogram for it. And I said, well, just make space right there. in the planogram.
But you're like pointing on a piece of paper, like just put right there, right there.
I mean, Rob, the number of times that I did exactly what you were doing, and they said that's above my pay grade.
That's above my pay. I can't put you there. I can't do it.
And then they'd be like, "But I love your product. It's really great." And how many? I mean, the number of meetings that went.
How many rejections? Like how you talk about, obviously your book's entitled "Overcoming Doubts and Doubters." So how many like rejections and doubters did you hit when you first came out with this in between category, new category killer?
Hundreds in the first year.
I, of course, love the company. I mean, I love it like a child. It's my baby. But I didn't really love what I was doing. I was doing bigger company stuff. And then here's the real thing is that I wasn't very good at it. There was people who were way better at it than I was. And it was this really kind of interesting insight for me about, I'll get heavy on you, Rob.
Yeah,
it's like the meaning of success, really, which is if I'm coming to work doing something that I don't really enjoy, and I'm doing something I'm not particularly good at, the company's successful, and I made money on it, but is that success? No. Success is getting a chance to do the things that you enjoy and you're good at. And for me, I discovered a long time ago that that's doing startups, doing early stage companies, sitting around the table with the really smart people solving these really interesting puzzles. And that if I was truly going to be successful, I should be doing that. And it took a year. The realization took place 6 months before the IPO that this was the chance I think I would take to get out.